corpses were very near each other, and I made their exact identification with no doubts.
Now in a refugee camp with some of his family, Milaim Belanice, a water engineer from Velika Krusha, fled from the village and hid out. He went back in secret to snatch pictures of the bodies before smuggling the tape across the border. Milaim used our map and drew sketches of his village to show exactly where he had filmed the bodies. That's the mosque. Milaim Belanice saw one group of bodies near a house by the mosque. So there were 26 bodies at that point. Another 38 were further on by a fork in the road. Milaim saw the arrival of Serb police and paramilitaries in the village. He believes they were responsible for what happened later. Some he thought were Arkan's paramilitaries. The notorious Arkan, real name Zelko Raznatovic, is wanted for earlier war crimes in Croatia and Bosnia.
Meanwhile, another guy arrived. They called him Commander. I don't know his name. He was wearing a red bandana around his head, and he had 3 scars on his face. KOC written on his scarf. From what I understood, they were Arkan's police.
Well, we know that a number of these people were released from jails. We know that they're often associated with the existing paramilitaries from Serbia that were active in Bosnia. We know that they tend to operate in conjunction with the regular armed forces and police that are the duly constituted armed forces and police of Serbia, so that these paramilitaries become the auxiliaries. They do the dirty work, just as they did in Vukovar or in Bosnia.
While the police were rounding up men in the village, an armed Serb unit separated the women and children and put them in the mosque. The women's fears of being raped were soon realized.
They stopped a girl and a young woman at the mosque. They said to them, "You are pretty, you're staying here." They kept them back from the rest of us. They kept them there for a while, and then they shot them.
The testimony of another survivor presents the clearest and most chilling picture of what happened at Velika Krusha. Salome Elshani lies in hospital, badly burned and in great pain. But he was determined to give us all the details to corroborate other accounts of what the Serbs did to the men of the village.
They fired at us with Kalashnikovs. As the first shot sounded, I fell to the ground. The others were all killed. Their bodies fell on top of me. Their blood was on my face. Another policeman brought the petrol, and they sprinkled it over the dead bodies and set fire to it. After that, I knew that I had to act fast. I would be burnt alive.
Somehow, Mr. Elshani struggled out alive. He hid out with nothing but yogurt to put on his burns for 8 days in the ruined village. Then he found a way to escape, hidden under blankets in the back of a tractor. By the time he left, he had not found another living person in the center of Velika Krusha. The massacre that Mr. Elshani survived is not the only one believed to have taken place in this vicinity. As many as 1,000 men and boys are feared to have died in the area. NATO says it's beginning to find the evidence. Satellite imagery taken earlier this year of a village further north shows an area of previously undisturbed ground. The same spot now has what appears to be around 150 burial plots in long rows. The question is, who was responsible and how much of the killing was directed from the top? The most likely culprits are the paramilitaries, Arkan's Tigers, and the men known as Frankies, under the control of Franki Simatovic, the shadowy deputy security chief. The paramilitaries come under the command of Rade Markovic, chief of state security. On the army side, the commanders on the ground in Kosovo are General Pavkovic and his deputy, Major General Lazarevic. Above them is General Oydenej, the army's chief of staff. And top of the chain of command is the commander-in-chief, President Milosevic himself. But can he be directly connected to the atrocities being committed by forces on the ground?
I think it's very clear that the leadership knows precisely who these people are and what they're doing.
And sends them, tasks them.
I think there's no question that all of this is part of a grander design.
By March the 28th, the overall design of the plan was becoming apparent. The target was now the northwest of the country, Peć, the second largest city in Kosovo. It began to be systematically cleared of its whole Albanian population, some 130,000 people in all, mainly in a fleet of buses.
It was Sunday, about 10 o'clock in the morning. Two vehicles with policemen comes and say, to our street, you have to leave because we are order. You have to leave. They start to drive us to the middle of town, to the center, and I see a thousand people gathering, looking for waiting for somebody to take them. But nobody knows where are they taking us.
Tens of thousands of refugees were pushed south along the road from Peć to Prizren, near the Albanian border. On the way, they passed through Đakovica, an ancient Kosovar Albanian town of 55,000 people. It now became the focus for some of the worst atrocities. NATO's aerial pictures show Đakovica was heavily shelled by the Serb army. Tens of thousands tried to flee, clogging the streets, where many, including women and children, were shot. Men were rounded up as paramilitaries roamed house to house.
Serbs came and took us out of the houses. They were saying to us, "Do you want NATO? Go to NATO, all of you." They were swearing, telling us, "You're not human," beating children, swearing and shouting at us, the women. We started our journey towards Albania. Then they separated about 100 men on our side of the road. There were about 100 women on the other side. They executed the men in front of everybody. Some children were saved, but not all of them.
The villages around the town were burnt, and as families converged on the main roads, many reported women missing and told of systematic and gang rape by Serb soldiers. By mid-April, as village after village in central and southern Kosovo had been largely emptied, Mr. Milosevic's plan began to focus on the north, near Serbia itself. The large industrial town of Mitrovica and surrounding villages were bombed and burnt. 100,000 people, many on foot, began a long trek that took them through areas ravaged before and on to the borders.
It looked like an effort to complete the plan of cleansing Kosovo. The Mitrovica area, of course, is next to Serbia, so it would be a key strategic area. It's near the mountains. There have been strong KLA movements in that area, and even though it had an Albanian majority, I had no doubt that the Serbs would want to see it ethnically cleansed.
But will Mr. Milosevic ever be brought to justice? Indeed, how can NATO negotiate a settlement with a man they have openly called a war criminal? It will require real political will to bring Mr. Milosevic before a court to answer for his part in the destruction of Kosovo. The victims will have to depend on the UN's War Crimes Tribunal to put Mr. Milosevic and his top people on trial. The future of the tribunal itself may well depend on the outcome.
I believe that, yes, that this will be the test of the professional capacity within the institution to develop credible evidence that will be sustainable in a courtroom for crimes of this magnitude. And I think we should not underestimate the kind of challenge it is to put together cases that are as widespread and as complex as they are against perpetrators way up the chain of command.
Will be brought to the tribunal, that he will face justice at the end of the day?
Inshallah. Inshallah is a Muslim saying. It means I pray to God it happens. He has committed terrible crimes. It's not too late, but the sooner the better.
The dispossessed of Kosovo take shelter from the rain to sleep on the floor of an old building in their hundreds. Behind them, still more people are streaming over the border, and more than 500,000 are still trapped inside Kosovo. For all those whose lives have been shattered, it will feel like a betrayal if the man responsible for the killing of Kosovo...
Trying to sell petrol, other industrial goods and food that is in short supply in Yugoslavia. On Thursday, Romania announced it was joining a European Union oil embargo, but it's unclear what effect that will have on the black market trade. They were forced to open the camp because of massive overcrowding at other camps in Macedonia. The UNHCR also says that more than 5,000 refugees arrived at the incomplete camp, 1,000 more than they had planned to admit.
Pieces of white paper and colored pens, handed out to Kosovar children in an Albanian refugee camp. The promise of an afternoon spent having fun. The assignment: draw a place beneath the sea. For some, that place was filled with fish and magical creatures. For 7-year-old Hasmir Hodai, it was a creature of more deadly intent.
These are NATO's airplanes, and they are bombing the Serbs.
9-year-old Amsor Batucci and others chose to draw pictures of the places they can't go now. Houses with gardens in the sun in Kosovo.
I left my home because Serbs told us to leave the homes fast.
The project is part of the organization Save the Children's efforts to reach the youngest of the refugees.
So we want to see the kids be happy and laugh and have a painting that they can take with them.
Always, say organizers, there are children who draw the initials for the Kosovo Liberation Army.
I'm drawing the KLA sign because the KLA is our army. It's for helping us, you know, supporting us. I like KLA.
Working with Save the Children, actress Maria Bello says the unexpected playtime and art project brings back a sense of normalcy for children whose lives are anything but.
They've seen people shot before their eyes, their houses have been burned down, some of their mothers have been raped in front of them, and it's amazing to me how resilient kids are, that after all that, they could be laughing and playing.
An activity that brings a few hours of color and light to these children, and turns out to be a special gift for their parents as well.
The parents know they're going to be here, know how much they've lost, don't know what the future holds, but their reason for living is their kids. And when they see their kids laughing and happy, then it gives them, it's like they know why they have to go on and they have to hope.
Hopes and dreams of children.
Days ago, this factory in the Serbian town of Valjevo, 90 kilometers southeast of Belgrade, was fully operational. Now the employees stare in stunned silence at the rubble of their former workplace. NATO planes bombed it recently, dealing a further blow to the Yugoslav economy.
You're looking at, in terms of infrastructure and fixed assets, at a devastated country. In terms of GDP, we are looking at about 25% drop to what the GDP would have been without the war.
Yugoslavia's economic productivity has fallen more than 50% since 1989. In the past 4 years alone, it has dropped from 35.2 to 23.6 billion marks. Almost every sector of the economy has been affected.
The industrial production, I would say, it would be halved, perhaps 40% down. If you look at agriculture, again, it would be about 10% or so down. So if you look at any other figure, these are actually figures that sort of represent a major catastrophe.
Employment has become a rare commodity in Yugoslavia, and even those who do work are taking home only 180 marks a month. Back in 1989, it was around 1,000 marks, and the dinar is losing value. Yugoslavia's bridges, so essential for international trade, have been severed. The country is becoming an economic desert, which will need a cash injection several times the cost of the Kosovo conflict to restore its economy.
And finally, the country of India is getting